In this lecture, we talk about skin. Of course, to be more precise, it is about integumentary system because the integumentary systems include our skin, which covers the body, as well as the hair and nails, which are called skin appendages. We will be talking about the functions of the skin, the detailed anatomy of the epidermis and dermis, which makes the skin, and the cleavage lines and surgical incision, which we should apply with day-to-day clinical experience. So this is the photograph of a hand. As you can see here, in the fingers, you can see the red area, which is called erythema, erythema. And on the palm of the hand, you can see the blisters or bullae. So the red area itself is just a first-degree burn, and the area which create bullae is the second-degree burn. Now, if we look at this photograph, the whole limb, like this is the right foot, right ankle, and right leg. The area is all completely burned out and charcoaled. And this is a third-degree burn. So a burn is a thermal injury, and scald is also a thermal injury. So what is the difference between scald and burn? A burn is a dry heat, and scald is a secondary to the steam or wet heat. So either burns or scald, it is the thermal, extreme thermal injury. If it is dry heat, we get burns, and if it is wet and liquid heat, then we get scald. Of course, therefore, we will say burns is an injury to the tissue caused by heat, chemical, electricity, and sunlight and radiation. If it is liquid, steam, flammable gas, that will be called scald. But combination, they are the injury of the skin to extreme heat. And as we have seen in the previous diagram, we can classify burns injury into first-degree burn, second-degree burn, third-degree burn. First-degree burn is only the epidermis. Therefore, it is just red and painful. There is no blister. Second-degree burn, it involves epidermis as well as some of the dermis layer. It is red, there will be blisters, and it is still painful. Third-degree burns, both epidermis and dermis has been completely burned out, and therefore there will be no nerve fibers left, and there is no sensation. So a skin is made of epidermis and dermis, and these are the first-degree, second-degree, and third-degree burns. So now the Wallace, W-A-L-L-A-C-E, Wallace rule of 9. Wallace is the Scottish surgeon, and he started talking about this rule of 9. So for that particular person, its palm of the hand makes 1% of their own body. So which means in anterior aspect of the torso body, including chest and abdomen, we have 18%, which means like there will be the surface area of the skin will be like 18 handbreadth on the chest. So anterior surface of the upper limb will be 4.5, and posterior surface will be 4.5. In combination, the upper limb will be 9. When it comes to the lower limb, because lower limb is double the surface area of the upper limb. So anterior surface of the one lower limb will be 9%, and posterior surface will be another 9%. And if we add like that, then we will get 99%. And the rest 1% will be our perineum. So the functions of the skin and the quality of the skin, or the characteristics of the skin. Skin is waterproof, skin is washable. If we have a small scratch or small injury, it will spontaneously repair. It is stretchable, and the skin will cover and protect our body for the rest of our life. And it is the largest organ in our body, and which contribute 7% of the body weight. Skin is made of superficial epidermis and deeper dermis layer. So combination of epidermis and dermis makes the skin. Hypodermis is deeper to the dermis, but it is not included in the skin. I hope we remember this diagram. Skin is made of epidermis and dermis. Hypodermis is not included in skin. Let's look at the skin. This is a piece of skin, and now we can see the epidermis and dermis, which makes the skin. If we look at that, in the dermis area, will be further divided into papillary dermis and reticular dermis. Papillary dermis is just a small portion, which is just about 20%, and reticular dermis makes about 80% of the whole dermis. And you can see all the hair follicles, nerve structures, and the blood vessels, erector pili muscles. They are all in the dermis region. When you look at the epidermis, there is no major structure here. It is just filled with cells. The job of the skin, number one, is protection. It is both physical and biological barrier. It acts as cushion. It protects us from the ultraviolet light, and it gives protection from the microorganisms. The skin has sensory receptors such as touch, temperature, pain, pressure, and therefore skin function as sensory organ. Skin also include sweat glands and capillaries, and therefore it is useful for temperature regulation. Epidermis cells use ultraviolet light to produce vitamin D, and we have a lot of sweat gland, and sweat includes salt, water, urea, and therefore skin acts as a secretory function. So this is the combination and what the skin do for us. So the skin is made of epidermis and dermis. Deeper to dermis, we have a hypodermis layer, which is not included in the skin. So epidermis is a superficial layer, dermis is a deeper layer. Epidermis is made of stratified squamous epithelium, which means stratified multiple layer of squamous, mean flat cells, multiple layer of squamous cells. And it is keratinized, which is a fibrinous waxy protein layer outside. Dermis is made of connective tissue proper, and dermis is equivalent to the hide, H-I-D-E, hide, leather, and binds the entire body together. So let's study about the epidermis. Epidermis has multiple layers of stratified squamous, multiple layers of squamous epithelium, and it has keratin. And on top of these stratified squamous cells, we have another 4 cells which are specific to the skin. They are keratinocyte, melanocytes, tactile epithelial cell, and dendritic cells. So this is the skin. We were talking about the epidermis, which is made of multiple layers of squamous epithelium. In between the multiple layers of squamous epithelium, we have these 4 cells. And if we look the skin under the microscope, we will have 5 layers in the epidermis. The easiest way to remember is going through their name. At the base, which is closest to the dermis, that layer is called stratum basale. Superficial to basale is spinosum, then granulosum, lucidum, lucid means clear layer, and finally the most superficial or outermost layer of the epidermis is cornea. So as we all remember, the epidermis is made of stratified squamous epithelium plus the cells distinct to the skin, which are tactile, keratinocyte, melanocyte, dendritic. Keratinocytes, of course, the name tells what it is going to do. Keratin forming cell sites. Melanocyte, it will produce melanin, melanocytes, new cells, which will give us the skin color. Dendritic cells, these are the policemen of the skin, and they will go and detect the invading antigens. So these are the 5 layers of the skin. If you look at the histology slide, you will see the dermis layer, and here you can start seeing the epidermis because it is resting on another type of cell, and on the opposite side, it is an empty C. Therefore, this is the epithelium. This epithelium is multiple layer of squamous epithelium. Therefore, we call it stratified squamous epithelium, and the outermost has keratin. And these are the 5 layers. Basement, after the basement membrane, stratum basale, spinosum, granulosum, lucidum, and the outermost is cornea. Stratum basale, as you saw, it is close to the dermal layer, which is rich with blood supply. And therefore, the cells are rich, the cells are rapidly dividing in stratum basale. So the keratinocytes are abundant and they are rapidly dividing. They have tactile cells, they have melanocytes. Starting to come out from the base to the superficial, stratum spinosum, the keratinocyte has spinous process-like, and therefore we call it spinosum. Stratum granulosum layer has granules of keratohyalin and lamellar bodies. Stratum lucidum, lucid, mean clear, dead layers of keratinocytes. So this layer, stratum lucidum, is only present in the thick skin. stratum corneum, cornu, which is like a horn, like filled with the keratinocytes, and they do shed off regularly, and they have the protective function to us. So skin can be thick skin or thin skin, depending on which part of the body. For the skin in our palms and soles, the skin are thick, and therefore they are called thick skin, which include 5 layers. The rest of the body has only 4-layer skin. They do not have stratum lucidum. Let's look at carefully here. Epidermis here, and dermis. Dermis has papillary dermis and reticular dermis. Epidermis has 5 layers: stratum basale, spinosum, granulosum, lucidum in thick skin, not in thin skin, and cornea. If we look at the dermis layer, we can see the papillary dermis and reticular dermis. The papillary dermis is trying to invade into the cell of the epidermis. Look at that. By doing so, it increased the surface area of contact between the dermis and epidermis layer. That is one advantage. Another advantage is mechanical advantage. Because it is invaginating, then there is a better grip between the epidermis and dermis. So now we can look at this. There will be multiple layers of flat squamous epithelium. In between the squamous epithelium, you will see dendritic cells, you will see keratinocytes. Keratinocytes will be most abundant closer to the dermis layer. Then once they gradually go superficial, they are gradually getting farther away from the source of nutrition. And these keratinocytes, they gradually die out and they become stratum cornea. Look at that. So dermis is a flexible connective tissue, which is made of connective tissue proper. It is hide or leather equivalent. Because connective tissue, they are made of cell and matrix. The cells will be fibroblasts mainly, and the macrophage, mast cells, and white cells. Matrix as airy matrix, like collagen, elastin, and reticular fibers. So if we look at that, papillary dermis is made of loose connective tissue. Reticular dermis is made of dense connective tissue. So now we know the skin is made of epidermis and dermis. Depending on which skin we look at, for thick skin, which means the skin for the palm or the sole of the foot, they will have 5 layers. And for the thin skin, the rest of the body, they will have only 4 layers. The missing layer will be stratum lucidum. The dermis has 2 layers, which is papillary dermis and reticular dermis. Papillary dermis contribute only 20%, and reticular dermis contribute 80%. And as we saw from the previous slide, papillary dermis is made of areolar connective tissue, because on top of this papillary dermis, our epidermal cells rest on. And reticular dermis is made of dense connective tissue. Whatever it is, they are made of connective tissue, and therefore they will have cell and matrix. Now, if we look at this diagram, it is showing the cleavage line in the reticular dermis. And we can also see the friction ridges in our fingers. Now, this is a surgical incision on the abdomen, which is a direct midline incision. This is umbilicus, vertical midline incision, which create a relatively large scar. So therefore, if we were to make a skin incision on the body, we should be following the skin cleavage line. We have to take advantages of these cleavage line to make skin incisions so that we can give our patient a neat and tidy, less painful scar. So if you look at different books, there you might see slightly different opinion, but these are the basic cleavage lines in our body. And look at that, the way we have cleavage line in our body. And if you look at this surgical incision, which is just above the pubic, it is following the cleavage line. This is usually used for cesarean section, which gives us a very neat and tidy scar. These are the few surgical incision some of which try to follow the skin cleavage line, like Fenestrine incision, that's for the lower segment cesarean section for delivery of the baby, or for prostate surgery. This gridiron and lens incision, they are for appendix surgery. So they try to adapt the body cleavage line to get the much easier scar. These are the midline and paramedian incision. This incision may have wound breakdown, may have more tension, and we give the patient a little bit more painful scar because it is very vertical. And if the patient sit up, it could be impinging on the body. So whatever it is, now we know that the skin is made of epidermis and dermis. Epidermis, we have 5 layers. Dermis, we have 2 layers. Epidermis layer, epidermis is made of stratified, which is multiple layers of squamous epithelium. Among these squamous epithelial cells, we have keratinocytes, melanocytes, dendritic cells, and in the dermis, we have papillary dermis and reticular dermis layers. So last slide for the skin, I want you to remember a lesion called Morin-Level lesion. The usual scenario is a young, big guy being thrown off from the motorbike, multiple injury, a lot of abrasion or just skin injury. In a few days' time, we noted this big swelling in the leg. There might or might not be associated with the underlying bony injury, but what really happened is there was a shearing force. If you look at these layers, the underlying muscle and the overlying skin, there is a shearing force and all the blood vessels are being torn off. and that creates bleeding. And bleeding collection of blood is called hematoma. Now the hematoma is splitting and lifting up the superficial layer, which are epidermis and dermis. And this area of skin, we lost blood supply and they can easily die or necrose. That is what is showing in this photograph. Now we come to the appendages of the skin, which include hair and the nail. And in this chapter, we need to concentrate more of terminology. And what is a nail? A nail is a dead keratinized cell. There are two types of keratins, hard keratin and soft keratin. Soft keratin is epidermis, which we saw, and hard keratin is nail and hair. So these are the few little terminologies which we need to pick up so that we can communicate better among the healthcare professionals. So if you look at your nail, you can see a little white moon-shaped layer. Moon-shaped, therefore it is called lacunae. And on the lateral nail fold, and this area is called hyponychium. This is the nail plate, which is resting on the nail bed. And this is the matrix, germinal matrix, nail matrix, which forms the nail. So if someone has nail bed injury, and if you think the nail matrix was split or injured as well, we should be repairing it. Otherwise, we can get a splitting nail or cracked nail. Appendages of the nail include nail, hair and hair follicles, sweat gland and sebaceous gland. The hair, what I want you to take in the center, we have the medulla, outer covering called cortex, and there is a cuticle. This makes a hair. This is the cross section of a cell. So the hair is made of 3 concentric layers of keratinized cells. They are medulla, cortex, and cuticle. This is a diagram of a hair follicle. Now comes to the sweat glands. There are 2 types of sweat glands in our body, which are eccrine and apocrine sweat gland. Eccrine sweat gland is present throughout our body, like it's involved with the sweating, and it is widespread in our body. Apocrine gland is, they become active when we get to puberty, and this apocrine gland gives us particular smell, which makes very poisonous smell, which is this apocrine sweat glands are present in the area, something like groin or axilla or anorectal region. So this is a tattoo. Tattoo is the deposition of pigments in our dermis. That is tattoo. So might be the last diagram for the skin and skin appendages. This is a very characteristics of basal cell carcinoma, cancer of the skin, basal cell carcinoma. It is very typical because it is seen in the sun-exposed area of the face. You can look at the pali roll-up area on the edge and central umbilication. And if you see this sort of lesion on this sort of area, I want you to remember basal cell carcinoma and be suspicious of it. squamous cell carcinoma, which is difficult to know. And of course, melanoma, they originate from the melanin producing cell, melanocytes. And this is melanoma. So that was the last slide for the lecture.